Hi, I'm political specialist Sean Boyd. We've shared with you the stories of moms desperate for baby formula after a recall shut down the top manufacturer, Abbott, causing a nationwide shortage. Now executives from Abbott and two other formula manufacturers, along with the FDA commissioner, are set to appear before Congress. They will field questions from the House Energy and Commerce Committee's Oversight and Investigations panel. Joining me on CBS News Colorado is chair of that panel, Congresswoman Diane DeGette. Thank you so much for being with us, Congresswoman. You know, I want to start out with, what do you expect to come out of this hearing?
Well, it's really kind of shocking that in this century that suddenly millions of American families can't find food for their babies, right? And so how did we get here? What was the convergence of events that caused this crisis? So we're going to be looking at a couple of different things. Number one, why did it take so long once this Chronobacter, the bacteria, was found at the Abbott factory? Why did it take so long after the original whistleblower complaint in September of last year till we got to just the last week where Abbott was entering into a voluntary recall and shutting down his factory to clean it and to start production again? Why did it take that long? And the second thing we want to know is, why did Abbott have a 45% share of the U.S. market on baby formula? And what was the U.S. role in that? Because, of course, Abbott had the contract from WIC, which is the government program to provide food for babies. And they entered into a contract with Abbott to get a reduced price. But then what that did was it gave Abbott a huge percentage of the market, not just in WIC, but also the private market. And then we have to figure out, does the FDA need more powers, and do they need more resources and people so that they can investigate these complaints, these very serious complaints? And lastly, and most importantly, we have to figure out what we can do to get formula on the shelves for the millions of Americans that need it. Not in 8 weeks, not in 6 weeks or 2 weeks, but right away. Because my constituents, they're driving all over the place looking for formula.
Yeah, I mean, just desperate, you know, these parents are right now. So is there something that Congress can do? Because you're right, even once they start up production again, I mean, we're talking about another 2 to 3 months of a shortage of formula right now. So what can Congress do to expedite things?
Well, there's a couple different things, Sean. Obviously, you know, infant formula, it has to be safe and it has to be nutritious. It's the only nutrition that these babies are getting. So the first thing that can happen, Abbott is already working, and it needs to work even harder to make formula at its other factories, and the other infant formula manufacturers need to ramp up their production as much as they can, and the government needs to support them by getting them the essential nutrients they need to make that formula. That's number one. The second thing, President Biden already invoked the Defense Production Act and has sent the military to get formula from Europe. And so we need to keep that up as much as we can. We've just the past few days, we've had a few shipments. Those are coming in with formula that's meant for babies with allergies who can't take other formula. So the very, very most vulnerable, but we need to keep that ramped up. So basically, we're in an all hands on deck situation. We need to do everything we can to get this ramped up as quickly as possible, and then we need to look at ways that we can improve and bolster up the FDA, and ways that we can ensure that we don't have contaminated factories that are having these contracts that have to shut down.
Right, and that was going to be my next question. Given the problems that we've seen at this plant, given the amount of time that it took the FDA to move in and take action, once this plant ramps back up, how confident are you, or can you assure parents that this formula is going to be safe?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you know, my committee, the Oversight Committee, we've been investigating food safety issues for decades. And the Food and Drug Administration it's food and drug, but they've spent most of their resources on drugs. So clearly they need more effort and maybe more resources towards investigators in the food realm. But what I will say about this factory, it's been kind of a problematic factory since 2010. There were issues discovered even that long ago. But now I think that that there's been this huge crisis. I think they're cleaning it. They're going to keep it up to snuff, and it will be safe. But the other thing that your viewers should know, and one of the things we just have to have, is each lot of the formula is inspected for safety. So going forward, I think people can be assured that this formula will be safe for their babies because it's going to be inspected.
Right, the way the rules were written before, a lot could be of any size too, right? And so you don't know how much of it was being inspected. And I know you touched on this at the beginning, but I just think so many people are surprised that so much of this formula was concentrated in this one plant. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that is something that you'll be looking into as well, right? I mean, it's almost like it's like a monopoly, really.
Well, right. I mean, as I said, what happens is the government gives a contract to Abbott, in this case, for formula to try to get a lower price for the taxpayers. That's all good, but the effect of that is then that the private, but then Abbott controls the private market as well, and so we need to look at really what can we do to make sure that we are diversifying the number of formula manufacturers so that a problem at one plant, a shutdown of one plant, doesn't disrupt the whole national formula supply.
Right. And so you'll be hearing from the executives and from the FDA commissioner. I know the CEO of Abbott wrote an op-ed. Anything from that, any reaction to what he had to say in that? I mean, obviously not taking responsibility for these 4 infants, the most recent ones, but apologizing at least.
Well, I mean, I'm glad they're apologizing. I'm glad they're apologizing, and I'm sure they're sorry. Their plant's closed down, and it's been very bad press for a very established company. But it's not much solace to my constituents who are driving around 3 or 4 hours to try to find formula for their babies. And so what Abbott needs to do, and what I'll be asking them tomorrow, is they need to give us a plan to try to ramp up their other facilities as quickly as possible to get formula out. And they need to actually tell us that just saying, well, we didn't find this particular strain of the bacteria in the 4 infants that were sick or died, that's not helpful, because there was evidence of this bacteria throughout the and other health issues throughout that factor. That's why they were closed down. So they have to give us an assurance that they're putting protocols in place that are going to stop this from happening in the future. It's not like they're manufacturing potato chips or something. They're manufacturing infant formula, which is the only source of nutrition for most of these babies who are taking it.
Anything we can do in the meantime to help out with this?
I think one thing people can do, and I know it's really hard, is to try not to stockpile formula when you find it. Because if you go to the store and you see more than you would normally get or normally need, and you get it, then you're taking that formula away from another baby who will need it. And I do believe that this crisis, because of President Biden's order on the supply and bringing it in from overseas, I believe that the production by other manufacturers and the Defense Production Act, which we learned how to use really well during the coronavirus outbreak, we will be getting supplies out. And so I think people should really resist that temptation. And then the other thing is, if you have a baby who really needs particularly specialized types of formula, call your doctor, call the health department. They may be able to get some sources for you. But we're pressing hard. Sean, I just had my first little grandbaby a couple of months ago, and luckily she's not on formula. But as anybody who's ever had a baby knows, that could change in a day or two. And so many millions of American families are impacted by this, and we just need to, we need to do everything we can to get formula out into the homes of all the parents in America.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Congresswoman, so much for taking the time to talk with us today, and be very interesting to see what comes out of this hearing.